The rain hammered against my hotel room window like bullets, each drop a reminder of the storm that had become my life. 3 hours ago I was Heidi Martinez, successful marketing executive, loving wife, devoted daughter. 3 hours ago I believed in happily ever after. Now I sit here staring at my wedding ring, a circle that once symbolized eternal love, now nothing more than expensive metal mocking me. My hands shake as I twist it off my finger for the first time in 5 years. The pale band of skin beneath looks naked, vulnerable. Like me. The image burns behind my eyelids. My husband Asher's hands on another woman's swollen belly. My best friend Rosemary's radiant smile as she accepted congratulations in my house. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife could. But here's what they don't know about me yet. Here's what they're about to discover. I don't break. I rebuild. And when I'm done rebuilding, I destroy. This is my story. This is how I took back my power. This is how I made them pay. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. 24 hours earlier, I was rushing through Chicago O'Hare Airport, my heels clicking against the polished floor as I navigated through the crowd. The Denver conference had ended a day early, and all I could think about was surprising Asher at home. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 7. College sweethearts who'd built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. Sure, things had been strained lately. Asher had been unemployed for 8 months after his marketing firm downsized, and the financial pressure was all on me. But I loved him. I believed we were strong enough to weather any storm. How naive I was. I remember calling my assistant Rebecca from the airport. Cancel my Monday meetings. I'm flying home early to surprise Asher. That's so sweet, Mrs. Martinez, she'd said. He's lucky to have you. Lucky. The word tastes bitter now. The flight felt endless. I kept imagining Asher's face when I walked through the door. Maybe we'd order takeout from that Thai place he loved, watch a movie, talk about his job interviews. Normal couple things. Happy couple things. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Rosemary. Can't wait to see you when you get back. I have news. I smiled, typing back. Me too. Home tomorrow night. Let's catch up. If I had known her news would shatter my world, I would have stayed in Denver forever. The taxi pulled up to our street just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the suburban neighborhood where Asher and I had bought our dream house 3 years ago. Well, where I had bought our dream house. The mortgage was in my name, paid with my salary like everything else in our life. But something was wrong. Cars lined both sides of the street. Not just any cars. I recognized my mother's blue sedan, my mother-in-law Lucy's silver SUV, and at least 6 others. A few neighbors stood on their porches looking toward our house with curious expressions. My heart started pounding as the taxi got closer. Colorful balloons bobbed in our front yard, pink and blue ones tied to the mailbox, more scattered across the porch. A large banner stretched across our front windows. Welcome our little miracle. The taxi driver glanced in his rearview mirror. Looks like someone's having a party at your place. Yeah, I whispered, my mouth suddenly dry. Looks like it. I paid the fare with trembling hands and stepped out onto the sidewalk, my suitcase wheels scraping against the concrete. The sound of laughter and music drifted from inside the house. My house, the house I'd been paying for alone while Asher looked for work. Pink and blue balloons. A baby shower banner. My best friend's text echoed in my mind. I have news. No. This couldn't be happening. I walked up the driveway on unsteady legs, each step feeling like I was walking through quicksand. Through the living room window I could see people inside holding drinks and gifts. My mother Caroline stood near the kitchen, laughing at something someone had said. My father Louis sat on our couch, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. I reached for the front door handle, my key already in my hand. But I paused, some instinct telling me that once I opened this door, everything would change forever. The smart thing would have been to turn around. Get back in a taxi. Go to a hotel and call Asher. Demand an explanation. Instead, I turned the key and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Vanilla cake and coffee, the scent of celebration. Yellow and green streamers hung from the ceiling, and the coffee table overflowed with wrapped gifts in soft pastels. But it was the sight in the center of the room that stopped my heart. Rosemary sat in my favorite armchair, the one I'd saved for months to buy, glowing in a flowing maternity dress that showed off her very pregnant belly. 7 months, maybe 8. She was opening gifts while a circle of women I knew, our mutual friends, my family members, cooed over tiny clothes and baby bottles. And there, kneeling beside her chair, was my husband. Asher's hand rested protectively on Rosemary's stomach, his face lit up with pure joy as he helped her unwrap a gift. The tender way he touched her, the intimate smile they shared, it was everything he used to give me before the unemployment, before the distance, before whatever lies he'd been telling himself to justify this. For a moment, nobody noticed me standing in the doorway. I was invisible in my own home, watching my life implode in real time. Then Rosemary looked up and saw me. Her face went white as a sheet. The onesie she'd been holding dropped from her fingers. "Heidi," she whispered. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward me. My mother's face drained of color. My father started to stand, then sat back down. My mother-in-law Lucy just stared at me with something that looked almost like defiance. But it was Asher's reaction that broke something inside me. He didn't jump up. He didn't remove his hand from Rosemary's belly. He didn't look guilty or ashamed or sorry. He looked annoyed that I'd interrupted. "You're supposed to be in Denver until tomorrow," he said, like I was the one in the wrong. I found my voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Surprise." The silence stretched on. Nobody moved. Nobody apologized. Nobody even had the decency to look embarrassed. Finally, my mother cleared her throat. "Heidi, sweetheart, maybe you should sit down. We can explain." Explain. The word exploded out of me. Explain how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working my ass off to support him? Explain how you're all here celebrating in my house like this is normal. Rosemary struggled to her feet, one hand on her back. "Heidi, please. It's not what you think." "It's not what I think?" I laughed, a sound so harsh it made several people flinch. "What I think is that you're 7 months pregnant with my husband's baby. What I think is that while I've been traveling for work to keep this household afloat, you two have been playing house behind my back. What I think is that my entire family knew about this and nobody thought to tell me." "We didn't want to hurt you," my father said quietly. "You didn't want to hurt me?" My voice was rising now, hysteria creeping in at the edges. "So instead you decided to let me find out by walking into a baby shower in my own home?" Asher finally stood up, but he positioned himself between me and Rosemary like he was protecting her. "From me. In my own house." "Heidi, you need to calm down," he said. "This isn't good for the baby." "The baby?" I stared at him in disbelief. "What about your wife? What about me?" "Things between us haven't been good for a long time," Asher said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "We both know that. Rose and I, we have something real. Something you and I lost." "Rose." He called her Rose, the pet name I'd used for her since college. I looked around the room at all these people I'd loved, trusted, supported. My mother, who I called every Sunday. My father, who I'd helped through his heart surgery last year. My mother-in-law, who I'd included in every holiday, every celebration. Our friends, who I'd hosted countless dinners for in this very house. Not one of them was looking at me with sympathy. They were looking at me like I was the problem. Like I was the one disrupting their perfect little celebration. "How long?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet now. Rosemary and Asher exchanged a look. "How long have you been sleeping together?" "Heidi," Rosemary started. "How long?" "A year," Asher said. "A year. While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat. While I was paying the mortgage, the car payments, the groceries, his health insurance. While I was believing his lies about job interviews and networking events. And everyone knew?" Silence. "Everyone knew and nobody thought to tell me?" My mother stepped forward. "Sweetheart, we thought it was better if it came from them." "Better?" I turned on her, fury blazing through my veins. "You thought it was better to let me live a lie? To let me support a man who was cheating on me with my best friend? You have to understand," Lucy, my mother-in-law, spoke up for the first time. "Asher and Rosemary, they're in love. Real love. And now they're having a baby. That baby deserves a family." "That baby," I said slowly, "has a family. A father who can't hold down a job and a mother who stabs her best friends in the back." "Heidi," my mother gasped. "That's enough." "No," I said, looking around the room one more time. What's enough is this? All of this. I turned and walked back toward the door, but Asher's voice stopped me. Where are you going? I turned back, and for the first time since I'd walked in, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. I'm going somewhere I won't have to look at any of you traitors. Heidi, you're being dramatic, Rosemary said, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. We never meant for it to happen. It did. But we can all still be friends. I laughed again, that same harsh sound. Friends? You think we can be friends? The baby is going to need aunts and uncles, she pressed on. And Asher will always be in your life. We have to find a way to make this work. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. You have no idea what you've just done, do you? Something in my tone made her step back. You think this is about a baby? About love? You think you've won something here? I looked at Asher, memorizing his face. In a few months he was going to look very different. You want to know what you've won, Asher? You've won your freedom. Complete freedom. From me, from my money, from the life I built for us. Congratulations. I walked out of that house and didn't look back, even though I could hear them calling my name. Even though my mother was crying and my father was shouting for me to come back and talk. I had nothing left to say to any of them. But I had plenty left to do. The Marriott downtown wasn't fancy, but it was anonymous. I checked in using cash and a credit card they didn't know about. One I'd opened years ago for emergencies. I suppose this qualified. I sat on the bed in my business clothes, staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I looked pale, shocked. Broken. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. James Walker, the lawyer who'd handled our house purchase 3 years ago. I'd kept his card because something about him impressed me. He was sharp, ruthless, and didn't believe in playing fair when the other side had already thrown out the rulebook. It was almost 9 p.m., but I called anyway. Walker Law Offices, this is James. He sounded tired but alert. Mr. Walker, this is Heidi Martinez. You handled a real estate transaction for me 3 years ago. I need to file for divorce and I need to do it fast. There was a pause. Mrs. Martinez? It's pretty late. Are you sure you don't want to sleep on this? Divorce is a big decision. My husband has been cheating on me with my best friend for over a year. She's 7 months pregnant with his baby. I just found out 3 hours ago at a surprise baby shower in my house. The house I pay for. Everyone I trusted knew about it and said nothing. Mr. Walker, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Another pause. Can you be in my office first thing Monday morning? Can't we do something sooner? This weekend. Mrs. Martinez, I appreciate that you're upset, but... I'm not upset, I interrupted. I'm strategic. And right now I have the advantage of surprise. In 12 hours they're going to realize I'm serious about this and start taking precautions. I want to move while they're still thinking they can talk me out of it. A longer pause. Then, I'll meet you at my office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Saturday. Bring every financial document you have. Thank you. Mrs. Martinez? Don't do anything rash tonight. Don't confront anyone, don't make any big financial moves. Let me handle this properly. I hung up without promising anything. Because I was absolutely about to make some big financial moves. I spent the rest of the night in that hotel room with my laptop, 3 cups of terrible coffee, and a growing sense of purpose that felt better than anything had in months. First, I logged into our joint bank account. Asher had access to it, but I was the primary account holder. I transferred every penny, $47,000, into my personal savings account. It was legally my money anyway. I'd earned every cent. Next, I called the automated line for our credit cards, all in my name since Asher's credit was terrible, and canceled them. Every single one. Then I called the mortgage company. Since the loan was in my name only, I had the right to make changes. I added a note to the account that all future communications should come to my office address only, and I requested that automatic payments be suspended immediately. By dawn, Asher's world was about to become very different. But I wasn't done. I called my office voicemail and left myself a message to contact HR first thing Monday about changing my emergency contact information and beneficiaries. I also made a note to call our insurance company about removing Asher from my health plan. Every safety net I'd built for him over 5 years of marriage was about to disappear. As the sun came up over the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Real power. The kind that comes from finally seeing clearly after months of living in a fog. My phone had been buzzing all night, calls and texts from Asher, from Rosemary, from my parents. I hadn't read any of them. But now I open the message thread. Asher, Heidi, where are you? We need to talk. Asher, you're being crazy about this. Come home. Asher, I know you're upset but you can't just disappear. Asher, seriously, where the hell are you? Mom, sweetheart, please call me. We love you. Dad, don't do anything you'll regret. Think about your family. Rosemary, Heidi, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. Please let me explain. Rosemary, the baby needs stability. We all need to figure out how to move forward together. I deleted every message without responding. At exactly 8 a.m., I was sitting in James Walker's office with a thick folder of financial documents and a yellow legal pad covered in notes. You've been busy, he said, reviewing my list. I'm just getting started. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Mrs. Martinez, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go scorched earth on this? Sometimes in cases like these, mediation can. Mr. Walker, I interrupted. Let me be very clear. My husband has been unemployed for 8 months. In that time I have paid our mortgage, our car payments, our insurance, our groceries, our utilities, everything. He has contributed nothing. Meanwhile, he's been having an affair with my best friend and got her pregnant. My entire family knew about it and said nothing. I leaned forward in my chair. They had their chance to do the right thing. Now it's my turn. He nodded slowly. What are your goals here? I want him to get nothing. Not 1 penny of alimony, not 1 cent of my retirement accounts, not 1 piece of furniture from that house. I want him gone, and I want him to understand that actions have consequences. The house is entirely in my name. I bought it before we were married and never added him to the deed. Smart. Your retirement accounts. All mine. I was the only one contributing. This might be easier than I thought. Illinois is an equitable distribution state, but since you kept most assets separate and he contributed so little financially. He made some notes. We can definitely work with this. There's something else, I said. I want this done fast. I don't want to drag this out for months. How fast? How fast can it be done if he doesn't contest it? If he agrees to everything? 6 weeks, maybe 8. And if he fights it? Could be 6 months or more. I smiled. He won't fight it. Trust me. I didn't go home that weekend. Instead, I stayed in the hotel and had all my meals delivered. I needed time to think, to plan, to prepare for what came next. On Monday morning, I went to work as usual, but my first stop was HR. I need to make some changes to my emergency contact information and insurance beneficiaries, I told Sandra, the HR manager. Of course. Is everything all right? I'm filing for divorce. Her expression shifted to professional sympathy. I'm so sorry, Heidi. What do you need from me? Within an hour, Asher was removed from my health insurance, my life insurance policy, and my 401k beneficiary list. My emergency contact was changed to my Aunt Gina, the only family member who hadn't been at that baby shower. Then I called the mortgage company. I'd like to know what happens if I stop making payments on my mortgage, I told the customer service representative. Well, you'd be in default after 30 days and we'd begin foreclosure proceedings after 90 days. And if I wanted to sell the house quickly, what would be the fastest way to do that? Are you having financial difficulties, Mrs. Martinez? We have programs. No financial difficulties. I just want to know my options. I took notes on everything she told me. By Tuesday, Asher was calling my office. Mrs. Martinez? There's an Asher Martinez online too. He says he's your husband, my assistant Rebecca said, her voice careful. Tell him I'm not available. He's called 4 times today. Then tell him I'm not available 4 times. Wednesday he started showing up at my office building. Security called me to say there was a man in the lobby demanding to see me. Tell security to escort him out. And if he comes back they should call the police. Thursday the divorce papers were served. Rebecca buzzed me around 10 a.m. Mrs. Martinez? There's a James Walker online one. Heidi, the papers were served this morning. Your husband has 30 days to respond. How did he take it? According to my process server, he seemed shocked. Kept saying there had to be some mistake. Any word from his lawyer? He doesn't have one yet. But give it time. I hung up and got back to work. I had a campaign to finish and a life to rebuild. By Friday I had my answer about whether Asher would fight the divorce. He was waiting in the parking garage when I left work. Heidi. He stepped out from behind a concrete pillar and I was struck by how terrible he looked. His hair was unwashed, his clothes wrinkled. There were dark circles under his eyes. Asher. I kept walking toward my car, keys already in my hand. We need to talk. We really don't. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage without even having a conversation. I stopped and turned around. 5 years of marriage. When exactly were we married, Asher? Because for the past year it seems like you've been married to someone else. That's not fair. What's not fair is me working 60-hour weeks to support a man who was cheating on me. What's not fair is finding out about it at a baby shower in my own house. What's not fair is having my entire family know about your affair and not telling me. Look, I know how this looks. How this looks. I laughed. It looks like you've been screwing my best friend and got her pregnant. Because that's exactly what happened. It's more complicated than that. No, it really isn't. I started walking again, but he followed me. The baby's due in 2 months, he said. Rose needs support. I can't just abandon her. And I couldn't just abandon you when you lost your job. But here we are. That's different. Is it? I reached my car and turned around one more time. You made your choice, Asher. When you decided to cheat on me, when you decided to get another woman pregnant, when you decided to let everyone I love keep your secret, you made your choice. Now I'm making mine. You're really going to divorce me? I already am divorcing you. You've been served. You froze our accounts. I can't access any money. They weren't our accounts. They were my accounts. With my money that I earned. I need money for food, for gas. Then get a job. Heidi, please. I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We. I stared at him in disbelief. There is no we anymore. There's you and your pregnant girlfriend and your baby. That's your family now. Deal with it. I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing alone in the parking garage. That night I called my Aunt Gina. Heidi, sweetheart. I was wondering when you'd call. I heard what happened. You heard. Your mother called me. She's worried about you. Are you going to try to talk me into forgiving him too? There was a pause. Baby girl, I've been married 3 times. 2 of those men cheated on me. You want to know what I learned? What? A man who cheats on you when you're supporting him isn't a man worth keeping. And family who knows about it and doesn't tell you isn't family worth having. I started crying for the first time since this whole thing began. You come stay with me for a while, Aunt Gina said. And don't you dare feel guilty about protecting yourself. I moved in with Aunt Gina the following week. She lived in a cozy townhouse about 20 minutes from my office, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. How are you handling the money situation? She asked over coffee one morning. What do you mean? Well, if you were supporting Asher and now you're not. I smiled. That's the beautiful part. I'm not handling the money situation. He is. By the 3rd week after I'd served him papers, the reality of his situation was starting to sink in. I knew this because Rebecca had been fielding increasingly desperate calls from him. He called 6 times yesterday, she told me. He sounded pretty upset. What did he want? He wanted to know when you were going to stop this nonsense and come home. I told him you weren't available. And he asked if I knew where you were staying. I told him that wasn't my business to share. Good. What Asher didn't know yet was that I'd also called the mortgage company and requested a payoff quote. The house was worth about $180,000, and I owed $140,000. I could pay it off entirely and sell it, or I could let it go into foreclosure. Either way, he was going to be homeless soon. I decided to let him figure that out on his own. The first sign that reality was hitting came in the form of a call from my mother. Heidi, you have to stop this, she said without preamble when I answered the phone. Asher is falling apart. Good. That's a terrible thing to say. Is it? Because I think it's a terrible thing to cheat on your wife with her best friend. People make mistakes. Mom, if you called to lecture me about forgiveness, you can save your breath. I'm not interested. But what about Rosemary? She's 8 months pregnant now. The stress of all this isn't good for the baby. Then maybe she shouldn't have gotten pregnant by a married man. Heidi. No, Mom. You don't get to be shocked by my reaction. You were at that baby shower. You knew about the affair and you said nothing. You chose their side over mine. We never chose sides. You absolutely did. You chose to keep their secret. You chose to celebrate their baby in my house with my money paying for the roof over their heads. You chose everyone else over your own daughter. There was silence on the other end. I have nothing else to say to you, I said and hung up. But the calls kept coming. From my father, from Lucy, from mutual friends who thought I was being too harsh. Every single one of them seemed to think that because Rosemary was pregnant, I should somehow be okay with the betrayal. That I should swallow my hurt and anger and play the role of the gracious ex-wife who just wanted everyone to be happy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 weeks after I'd filed for divorce, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Martinez, this is Jennifer from First National Mortgage. I'm calling because your account is 90 days past due, and we need to discuss your options before we begin foreclosure proceedings. Actually, I'd like to discuss selling the house. Oh. Well, that changes things. Are you working with a realtor? Not yet, but I'm looking for someone who can move quickly. I can give you some referrals. I chose an agent who specialized in quick sales and told her I wanted the house on the market immediately. Price it to sell fast, I told her. I don't care about getting top dollar. What about your husband? Will he need to sign anything? The house is entirely in my name. He has no legal claim to it. Oh. Well, that makes things simpler. Within a week, there was a for sale sign in the front yard. That's when Asher finally called my office and demanded to speak to me. You can't sell the house, he shouted when I picked up the phone. I can and I am. Where am I supposed to live? That's not my problem anymore. I have nowhere to go. You have Rosemary. I'm sure she'll make room for you. She's living with her parents. There's no room for me there. I felt a spark of satisfaction at that. Then I guess you better figure something out. You can't do this. It's cruel. What's cruel is cheating on your wife. What's cruel is getting your wife's best friend pregnant. What's cruel is having everyone your wife loves and trusts lie to her face for over a year. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Now live with it. Heidi, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. For just a moment I wavered. This was the man I'd loved for 7 years, the man I'd planned to grow old with. Hearing him beg was harder than I'd expected. But then I remembered the look on his face when I'd walked into that baby shower. The way he'd positioned himself between me and Rosemary like I was the threat. The way he'd called her Rose, with such tenderness while treating me like an inconvenience. You made your bed, Asher. Now lie in it. With your pregnant girlfriend. I hung up. 2 days later the house sold. The buyers were a young couple who could close in 3 weeks and they offered asking price. I used the proceeds to pay off the mortgage and the rest went into my savings account. I was now completely debt-free and had enough money to start over anywhere I wanted. But I wasn't leaving town yet. I wanted to watch the rest of this play out. 3 months after I'd filed for divorce, I ran into an old colleague at a coffee shop downtown. Maria had worked at Asher's old company before she moved to a different firm. Heidi. How are you? I heard about. She trailed off awkwardly. About my divorce. I'm great actually. Better than I've been in years. I'm glad. You deserve better than, well anyway. She paused. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I saw Asher last week. Oh. He applied for a job at my company. I was on the interview panel. I tried to look disinterested but I was dying to know more. How did it go? Maria grimaced. Not well. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in weeks. And when we asked about the gap in his employment he got defensive and started talking about how his vindictive ex-wife had ruined his life. I nearly choked on my lot. He said that in a job interview? Oh, it gets worse. When we asked for references he couldn't provide any recent ones because apparently he's burned bridges with most of his former colleagues. And when HR called to verify his last employment, they found out he'd been let go for poor performance, not downsizing like he'd claimed. Wow. Yeah. We passed on him pretty quickly. I felt bad but... He shrugged. We can't hire someone who badmouths his ex-wife in an interview. After Maria left, I sat in that coffee shop for another hour processing this information. Asher was sabotaging himself at every turn and he was blaming me for it. Perfect. That evening my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Heidi. It's me. Rosemary. I almost hung up but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I'm in the hospital. Despite everything, a spike of concern shot through me. What happened? Is the baby okay? The baby's fine. I'm fine. But... She started crying. Asher's not here. What do you mean he's not there? I went into early labor yesterday. I called him, but he didn't answer. I had to call my mom to drive me to the hospital. I frowned. Where was he? Job hunting apparently. But Heidi, he's been gone for 3 days. He said he had interviews in Milwaukee and might need to stay overnight, but that was Sunday. It's Wednesday. And... I think he's drinking again. What do you mean again? He used to have a problem in college. Before you two got serious. I thought he'd stopped, but lately... She sniffled. He's been coming back to my parents' house smelling like alcohol, and yesterday when I called him he sounded drunk. I should have felt satisfied. This was exactly the kind of karma I'd been hoping for. But instead I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. For her, not for him. Rosemary, why are you calling me? Because I don't know what to do. My parents are already stressed about me living there with the baby coming, and now Asher's disappeared and I'm scared and I don't have anyone else to. Stop. My voice was sharp. You don't get to call me for support. You don't get to make me your backup plan after you stole my husband. I know, but nothing. You wanted him, Rosemary. You fought for him, you got pregnant by him, you broke up my marriage for him. Well, congratulations. This is what you won. Heidi, please. You called me your best friend for 10 years, and then you stabbed me in the back for a man who can't even show up when you're having his baby. That's the choice you made. Now live with it. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. But her words haunted me for the rest of the night. Asher was drinking again. He was disappearing for days at a time. And Rosemary was alone in a hospital room, having just given birth to his child. Good, I told myself. They deserved each other. The divorce was finalized on a cold Tuesday in February, exactly 4 months after I'd walked into that baby shower. I sat in the courthouse next to James Walker, watching as the judge signed the papers that officially ended my marriage. Asher wasn't there. His court-appointed lawyer, he couldn't afford to hire his own, said he was dealing with a family emergency. What kind of emergency? The judge asked. His newborn son is in the NICU, Your Honor. Complications from premature birth. I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy but not satisfaction either. A baby in the NICU was serious, regardless of the circumstances of his conception. But then the lawyer continued, Mr. Martinez is also currently seeking treatment for alcohol dependency. There was the final domino. James leaned over and whispered, Are you okay with proceeding without him here? Absolutely. The judge reviewed our settlement agreement one more time. It was exactly what I'd wanted. I kept everything that was legally mine, which was nearly everything. The house sale proceeds, my retirement accounts, my car, my personal belongings. Asher got nothing except his clothes and his debts. Mrs. Martinez, do you understand that this agreement means you will receive no alimony and owe no alimony? Yes, Your Honor. And you're satisfied with this arrangement? Completely. Very well. The marriage between Heidi Martinez and Asher Martinez is hereby dissolved. Just like that, it was over. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. The winter air was crisp and clean, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I could see my future clearly. James walked me to my car. So what's next for you? I've been offered a promotion at work. Senior Vice President of Marketing. It would mean relocating to our Seattle office. Congratulations. You taking it? I think so. There's nothing keeping me here anymore. What about your family? I thought about my parents who still called occasionally to guilt me about abandoning Asher in his time of need. About my mother-in-law, who'd sent me a nasty letter about how I was destroying an innocent baby's chance at having a father. My real family is my Aunt Gina. She's thinking about moving to the Pacific Northwest anyway. Says she's tired of Chicago winters. James smiled. Sounds like a fresh start. Exactly what I need. 6 months later, I was settled into my new life in Seattle. I had a corner office with a view of Puget Sound, a small but beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill, and for the first time in years I was dating again. Nothing serious, but it felt good to remember that I was an attractive, successful woman who deserved to be treated well. I hadn't heard anything about Asher or Rosemary since the divorce, and I'd been happy to keep it that way. But Aunt Gina, who'd moved to Portland and visited me regularly, occasionally brought news from Chicago. "Your mother called me last week," she said over dinner at my favorite seafood place. "Oh. She wanted me to give you a message." I sighed. "Let me guess. Asher's doing terrible and it's all my fault." "Actually no. She wanted to apologize." I nearly dropped my fork. "What?" "Apparently Rosemary finally told them the truth about how the affair started." "Which is?" Gina pulled out her phone and scrolled through her notes. "According to your mother, Rosemary admitted that she pursued Asher aggressively. Started showing up at your house when she knew you were traveling, bringing him food, offering to help with job applications. Your mother said Rosemary told her she'd been attracted to Asher since college but never acted on it until she saw an opportunity." I felt a strange mix of vindication and disgust. So she's admitting she deliberately broke up my marriage. Gets worse. She also admitted that she lied about the timeline. The affair didn't start a year ago. It started almost 2 years ago, right after Asher lost his job. 2 years. While I was working myself to death to keep us afloat, both of them had been planning my destruction. "There's more," Gina continued. "Apparently Asher's been in and out of rehab 3 times since the baby was born. Rosemary finally threw him out permanently last month." "What?" "She filed for a restraining order. Said he'd gotten violent when he was drinking." I sat back in my chair processing this. Where is he now? Homeless, near as anyone can tell. Living out of his car when he can afford gas, crashing at shelters when he can't. I should have felt triumphant. This was everything I'd wanted, wasn't it? Complete destruction of the man who'd betrayed me? That I felt empty. What about the baby? Healthy now, thank God. Rosemary moved back in with her parents. Your mother said she seems pretty miserable. Good. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I meant it anymore. 8 months after my divorce was finalized, I flew back to Chicago for a work conference. I hadn't planned to see anyone from my old life, but fate had other plans. I was walking out of the hotel on my last night in town when I saw him. Asher was sitting on a bench outside the Starbucks across the street, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. He'd lost at least 30 pounds, his hair was longer and unkempt, and his clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in days. He was staring at nothing, holding a cardboard cup that probably contained the cheapest coffee on the menu. This was the man who'd broken my heart. The man I'd loved for 7 years. The man I'd supported and trusted and believed in. He looked like a ghost. I should have walked away. I should have gotten in my rental car and driven back to the airport without looking back. Instead, I found myself crossing the street. Asher. He looked up and I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, shame, hope, despair, before settling on resignation. Heidi. I sat down on the other end of the bench, keeping distance between us. You look. He trailed off, shaking his head. You look amazing. Success suits you. Thank you. We sat in silence for a few minutes. He smelled like alcohol and cigarettes, and I could see his hands shaking as he held his coffee cup. I heard about the baby, I said finally. Congratulations. He laughed, a bitter sound. Congratulations? I haven't seen him in 2 months. Rosemary won't let me anywhere near him. Maybe that's for the best. Yeah. Probably. He took a sip of coffee. I fucked up everything, didn't I? Yes, you did. I thought. He shook his head again. I don't know what I thought. That the grass was greener, I guess. That if I could just start over with someone who didn't know what a failure I was. I never thought you were a failure. No, because I sure felt like one. You were so successful, so put together. And I was just this unemployed loser living off his wife's money. So you decided to cheat on me with my best friend? I decided to be selfish. I decided to take the easy way out instead of dealing with my problems. He looked at me for the first time since I'd sat down. I'm sorry, Heidi. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, of the charm he'd always been able to turn on when he needed something from me. But I didn't see any of that. I just saw a broken man who destroyed his life through his own choices. What happened to you, Asher? The drinking, I mean. Started right after you left. Couldn't deal with the guilt, couldn't deal with the stress, couldn't deal with the fact that I'd thrown away the best thing in my life for. He gestured vaguely. For nothing, it turns out. Rosemary wasn't nothing. Wasn't she? He loved the idea of me, maybe. The idea of stealing someone else's husband, of winning some competition I didn't even know we were having. But she didn't love me. How could she? She didn't even know me. I thought about what Gina had told me about Rosemary pursuing him, about the lies they'd both told about when it started. She admitted that she came after you, I said. Yeah. Took her long enough. He rubbed his face with his free hand. You want to know the really fucked up part? I knew you were the better woman. I always knew that. You were loyal, hardworking, honest. Everything I wasn't. Then why? Because she made me feel like I was worth something. Like I was desirable instead of just tolerated. She looked at me like I was a prize instead of a burden. He laughed again. Turns out when you get the prize, you realize it's not worth what you paid for it. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Try to get sober again, I guess. Try to find a job that doesn't require references. Try to figure out how to be a father to a son I'm not allowed to see. You could move away. Start fresh somewhere else. With what money? I can barely afford gas for my car, and that's when it's running. I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet. I had about $60 in cash and I handed it to him without thinking. He stared at the money like it was a snake. I can't take this. It's not a loan. It's not charity. It's just closure. Closure. You apologized. I believe you mean it. This conversation is the ending our marriage should have had. Civil. Honest. Human. He took the money with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just try to be better. For your son, if not for yourself. I stood up to leave, but his voice stopped me. Heidi. Yeah. You were right to leave me. You were right about everything. I looked down at him one more time, this broken shell of the man I'd once loved, and felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. I know, I said. Take care of yourself, Asher. I flew back to Seattle the next morning with a strange sense of completion. Seeing Asher like that, destroyed, desperate, alone, should have felt like the ultimate victory. And in a way it did. Justice had been served. Karma had done its work. But what felt even better was the realization that I no longer needed him to suffer for me to be happy. I had built a new life that was entirely my own. A life where I was valued, respected, successful, and free. A life where I didn't have to support anyone who didn't support me back. That was the real victory. My phone rang as I was walking through Seattle-Tacoma Airport. It was my mother. Heidi, Gina told me you saw Asher. I did. How are you feeling about that? I considered the question carefully. Sad for him. Grateful for me. Ready to move on completely. I owe you an apology, my mother said quietly. A real one. Not for Asher, that's between you and him. But for not telling you about the affair. For choosing to protect him instead of you. For making you feel like your reaction was wrong. Thank you. You're my daughter. I should have been on your side from the beginning. Yes, you should have. Can you forgive me? I thought about it as I found my gate and settled in to wait for my flight. Could I forgive her? Could I forgive any of them? I can forgive you, I said finally. But things are different now. I'm different now. I'm not going to pretend that what happened didn't matter, and I'm not going to go back to the way things were before. I understand. I hope you do. Because I like who I've become. I like the life I've built. And I'm not going to compromise it for anyone ever again. I'm proud of you, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I know I didn't act like it at the time, but I'm proud of how strong you've been. After I hung up, I sat in that airport gate thinking about strength. For most of my life, I'd thought strength meant enduring. Putting up with things. Sacrificing for others. Making excuses for people who hurt me. Now I knew better. Strength meant knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserved. Strength meant walking away from people who betrayed you even when it was hard. Strength meant building a life so good that you didn't need anyone else's approval to feel complete. I'm writing this from my home office in my new house in the hills above Seattle. Through my window I can see the Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. It's a perfect Saturday morning, and I'm about to meet my boyfriend David for brunch before we go hiking. David is nothing like Asher. He's a successful architect who owns his own firm, he's emotionally mature, and he treats me like an equal partner. When I told him the story of my first marriage, he said exactly what I needed to hear. I'm sorry that happened to you and I'm grateful that it led you here. I still live by myself and I intend to keep it that way for a while. I learned that I like my own space, my own routine, my own money. If and when I decide to combine my life with someone else's again, it will be as an addition to my happiness, not a requirement for it. I haven't spoken to Asher since that night outside the Starbucks. But I heard through Aunt Gina that he eventually got sober and found work at a warehouse outside Chicago. He sees his son every other weekend now, and according to her, he seems to be trying to rebuild his life responsibly. I hope that's true. Not because I've forgiven him. Forgiveness is different from moving on, but because his son deserves a father who's present and stable. Rosemary tried to reach out to me about a year ago through social media. She wanted to make amends and rebuild our friendship. I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. My relationship with my parents is cordial but distant. We talk on holidays and birthdays. They're always careful to ask about my life without giving advice or opinions I didn't request. It's not the close relationship we used to have, but it's honest and that matters more to me now. The house I shared with Asher sold 3 years ago to that young couple who reminded me of who I used to be. Hopeful, trusting, ready to build a life with someone I loved. I hope they're happier in it than I was. I hope they're stronger than I was. I hope they never have to learn the lessons I learned. But if they do, I hope they learn them as thoroughly as I did. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled the divorce, if I think I was too harsh, too unforgiving. They suggest that maybe I should have tried counseling, that maybe I should have considered the baby, that maybe I should have been more understanding about Asher's struggles. To those people I say this. I spent 5 years understanding Asher's struggles. I spent 5 years being patient and supportive and forgiving. I spent 5 years making excuses for someone who was lying to me every single day. I gave him my loyalty, my trust, my financial support, and my love. In return, he gave me betrayal, humiliation, and pain. I owed him nothing after that. Not understanding, not forgiveness, not a soft landing for the consequences of his choices. What I owed myself was protection, respect, and the chance to build a life with someone who would treat me the way I deserved to be treated. That's exactly what I did. Sometimes people call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as justice. Or better yet, as self-respect in action. I didn't destroy Asher's life. He did that himself when he chose to cheat on me with my best friend. I simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of his actions. I stopped being his safety net, his financial support, his excuse maker. I stopped protecting him from reality. And reality, as it turned out, was harsh. But that wasn't my responsibility to fix. It was his responsibility to face. I learned something important through all of this. You teach people how to treat you. For 5 years, I taught Asher that he could take me for granted, that he could depend on me no matter what, that I would always be there to clean up his messes. I taught him wrong. Now I teach people something different. I teach them that I have boundaries, that I have standards, that I won't tolerate disrespect or betrayal or lies. I teach them that I'm worth more than that. And you know what? They listen. The men I date now treat me well because they know I won't accept anything less. My colleagues respect me because I respect myself. My friends value our relationships because they know I won't stay friends with people who hurt me. I'm not the same woman who walked into that baby shower 3 years ago. That woman was too forgiving, too understanding, too willing to sacrifice her own happiness for other people's comfort. This woman, the woman I am now, is stronger, smarter, and infinitely happier. This woman knows her worth and refuses to accept less than she deserves. This woman built a life so good that no one can take it away from her. This woman won.